It was a cold, unforgiving Tuesday morning in February 1968. The clock hands had barely swept past 4 a.m. when the first unmarked sedans, dark behemoths against the pre-dawn gloom, began to choke the narrow side streets off Harlem's legendary 125th Street. 200 federal agents, a force unseen in this vibrant, defiant pocket of New York since the Prohibition raids, moved with the quiet, chilling precision of a well-oiled machine. Their target was clear, emblazoned on every briefing sheet, whispered in every hushed command: Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. The word on the street passed like an electric current from the glittering marquee of the Apollo Theatre to the grimy, smoke-filled back alleys of Sugar Hill was that this was it. The feds were finally going to bring down the man they called the Godfather of Harlem, once and for all. Everyone expected a bloodbath, a desperate last stand. But what happened next didn't just defy expectations. It became legend. Bumpy Johnson didn't fight, he outsmarted them. He didn't just survive the biggest federal operation mounted against him. He turned it into a public spectacle, a masterclass in psychological warfare that solidified his power and left the might of the FBI looking like greenhorns chasing shadows. The real question, one that still hangs in the air like cigar smoke in a backroom, isn't how he survived, but how he managed to pull off such an impossible feat. What unseen hand was at play? What secret deal was brokered beneath the surface? Or was it simply the sheer, unparalleled cunning of a man who understood Harlem better than the government ever could? To truly grasp the audacity of that morning, you need to understand the chessboard he played on and the players caught in its unforgiving game. Harlem in the late 1960s was more than just a neighborhood. It was a simmering cauldron of change, a vibrant cultural epicenter where jazz clubs thrived alongside the illicit numbers game. This underground lottery was a fragile economic lifeline for countless families, a shadow economy that put food on tables when legitimate opportunities vanished. At the heart of this intricate ecosystem, the undisputed king of the numbers racket, was Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy was no mindless thug. His reputation wasn't built on brute force, but on a razor-sharp intellect and an unshakable code of conduct. He was a chess master, they said, a strategist who saw 10 moves ahead, his quiet demeanor often masking a mind constantly calculating the odds. He was dangerous, not because of the gun he carried, but because of the profound respect he commanded and the fierce loyalty he inspired. A loyalty rooted in his paradoxical role as both a criminal kingpin and, in the eyes of many, a protector of his community. Opposing him, and emblematic of a new federal resolve, was Special Agent Thomas Riley. Fresh out of Quantico, Riley was a determined G-man, eager to make a name for himself. He saw Bumpy Johnson not as a community figure, but as the embodiment of organized crime, a defiant symbol challenging federal authority in the city's black neighborhoods. Riley was dangerous because he wielded the full, unyielding might of the federal government, an army of agents, sophisticated wiretaps and resources Bumpy couldn't hope to match. Caught in the suffocating middle was Jimmy the Kid Barnes. A young, fast-talking numbers runner, Jimmy had a gambling problem he couldn't shake, and a pregnant wife he adored. He owed money to the wrong people. When the FBI swooped into Harlem, they saw his weakness, his fear for his family, as the perfect lever. They saw a man they could turn, a small cog in their grand design to dismantle Bumpy's empire from the inside. Jimmy was dangerous because his desperation could unravel everything. He was a fuse lit under a powder keg. What was truly at stake wasn't just the millions flowing through the numbers racket, it was the very control of Harlem itself. Its streets, its people, and the delicate balance of power Bumpy had meticulously maintained for decades. The burgeoning drug trade threatened to destabilize the old order, and the federal government, increasingly focused on civil unrest and organized crime, saw Bumpy as a direct challenge. If the feds could publicly break Bumpy, they could send a clear message. No one was above the law, no matter how deeply rooted their power. This was about crushing a legend to make an example. The operation against Bumpy Johnson began not with a bang, but with surgical precision. This was Act 1 of Agent Riley's grand strategy. His agents systematically swept through Harlem, raiding known numbers parlors, seizing ledgers, and rounding up low-level operators. The pressure was immense, a psychological siege designed to starve Bumpy's empire of its lifeblood. The streets of Harlem buzzed with an uneasy energy. Everyone knew what was coming. The tension was palpable, a heavy cloak draped over every corner. It felt inevitable that Bumpy, for all his cunning, would finally be cornered, his options dwindling. Then came Act 2, the careful, deliberate laying of the trap. Agent Riley, convinced he had a solid lead, a vulnerability to exploit, began leaning heavily on Jimmy Barnes. The kid, terrified and desperate, saw his world shrinking, his pregnant wife. He was instructed to facilitate a specific, high-stakes money transfer, a collection from Bumpy's most lucrative territory, and report every detail, every movement, every name involved. His fear was a palpable thing, a knot in his stomach every waking moment. He was told to leave a specific, almost imperceptible mark on a single crisp dollar bill, a secret signal that would confirm his cooperation and seal Bumpy's fate. Jimmy, torn between the street's code of loyalty to Bumpy and the very real, immediate threat to his family, vacillated. Every whispered phone call, every moment of hesitation became a potential death sentence for himself and a strategic vulnerability for Bumpy. He thought he was playing one side against the other, trying to survive. But here's the kicker, the detail nobody outside Bumpy's inner circle could have known, the one that turned the entire operation on its head. Bumpy Johnson was always 3 moves ahead. He had eyes and ears everywhere, not through intimidation, but through genuine connections, quiet favors, and an unparalleled understanding of human nature. He knew about Jimmy's debt. He knew about his wife. He knew about the pressure he was under. Weeks earlier, Bumpy had quietly, almost invisibly, turned Jimmy without the FBI ever knowing. He had anticipated the federal government's move, not the specific details perhaps, but the pattern, the pressure points they would inevitably exploit. Jimmy Barnes wasn't Riley's informant, he was Bumpy's unwitting Trojan horse, carefully placed, carefully managed. The iconic moment, the silent message that would ripple through Harlem, wasn't a bullet or a bribe. It was a single, perfectly folded dollar bill. Not just any dollar, but one with a specific, almost artistic crease, a signature known only to Bumpy and his most trusted lieutenants. This was the marked bill Jimmy was supposed to deliver. But Bumpy, having already secured Jimmy's silent allegiance weeks prior, a loyalty born of protection, not fear, ensured that the bill Jimmy actually delivered to the FBI, supposedly as proof of his cooperation, carried a different, subtle crease. A silent signal, a message from Bumpy himself confirming that Jimmy was indeed compromised, but not in the way the feds thought. He was Bumpy's man, playing Riley's game. The intelligence Jimmy fed Riley was meticulously crafted disinformation, just enough truth to be believable, just enough fiction to lead them straight into a dead end. Every incriminating document was a carefully planted red herring, every reported movement a perfectly orchestrated decoy. The climax wasn't a shootout in a back alley. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a slow, agonizing unraveling of an overconfident adversary. As Agent Riley's team moved in on what they believed was the final decisive raid, the moment they would catch Bumpy Johnson with incriminating evidence and a network fatally compromised, they found nothing. The doors of the supposed numbers parlor swung open to reveal empty rooms, cold coffee cups still on the desk, and the lingering scent of stale cigar smoke, a phantom presence mocking their efforts. The FBI, expecting to find Bumpy cornered, his empire crumbling, instead found themselves standing in the middle of Harlem, looking foolish, their massive operation yielding nothing but thin air. The early morning light, which they had hoped would illuminate their victory, instead exposed their utter failure. The real blow, the gut punch that landed with the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions, came a few hours later. The perfectly creased dollar bill, the real signal that Bumpy had orchestrated, was not found in Riley's evidence locker, but tucked into the pocket of a low-level FBI informant, a man named Specs Miller. Miller was a seemingly insignificant figure, an agent feeding Riley bad information for weeks, a man Bumpy had been grooming for months. This wasn't merely a missed arrest, it was a public humiliation. A clear message delivered not with bullets, but with silent, undeniable proof of infiltration and superior intelligence. It was a clear demonstration that in Harlem, true power wasn't about who had the most guns, who had the most badges, or who wielded the biggest budget. It was about who understood the game better, who had the loyalty of the streets, and who could turn an enemy's strength into their greatest weakness. The FBI had walked into a trap meticulously laid by the very man they sought to destroy. In the morning newspapers, Riley's Harlem sweep was reported as a massive failure, an embarrassing waste of taxpayer money. The headlines screamed of incompetence, of a federal machine grinding against thin air. Within 72 hours, Agent Riley was quietly reassigned, his promising career effectively stalled, if not permanently derailed. The federal presence in Harlem, once a suffocating blanket, visibly receded, leaving behind a profound sense of defeat. Bumpy Johnson, far from being arrested, was seen publicly, walking the streets of Harlem, shaking hands, a quiet, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. His legend, already formidable, grew exponentially overnight. The city reacted with a mixture of relief and renewed respect. Bumpy had not only survived, he had conquered without firing a single shot, using his intellect as his weapon. His influence over the numbers game was solidified, and any thoughts of other criminal families moving into Harlem were quickly abandoned. The lesson was clear, etched into the very soul of the city. In Harlem, some battles aren't won with bullets, but with whispers, with calculated moves, and with an unyielding understanding of the unseen currents of power. Respect isn't given. It's earned through cunning and a deeper comprehension of the game than any outsider could hope to achieve. So the question remains, was Bumpy Johnson a criminal who exploited his community, or a king who protected his kingdom by playing a dangerous game better than anyone else? Perhaps he was both. He was a product of Harlem, a man who understood its heartbeat, its struggles, its defiance. He showed that true power isn't in sheer force, but in the unseen webs of loyalty and the subtle art of the long game. If this story of a quiet man outsmarting the might of the federal government caught your attention, then hit that like button. What are you waiting for? Subscribe to our channel and become part of our community, where we uncover the forgotten tales that shaped our world. Was Bumpy a hero or a villain in your eyes? Let me know in the comments below. And share this with someone who needs to hear about the ultimate chess match played on the streets of Harlem. You won't believe the next story we're diving into. It's even more insane. Don't miss it.